A nurse? That's quaint. Patricia Bennett's voice dripped with disdain as she stirred her tea, her perfectly manicured nails clinking against the china. Sarah's about to finish her residency, you know. She'll be a proper doctor soon. I sat across from my mother-in-law at her weekly family tea, forcing a polite smile while she continued her usual comparison between me and my sister-in-law. The fact that I'd been working night shifts at the hospital while pursuing my medical degree was something I kept quiet about for the past 5 years. My name is Emma Thompson, and at 32, I learned to handle Patricia's constant belittling with grace. My husband Mike supported my decision to keep my studies private, understanding why I wanted to achieve this on my own terms. Did you hear Sarah's been offered a position at Memorial General? Patricia continued, practically glowing with pride. The youngest neurology resident they've ever had. Of course, we always knew she was destined for greatness. I nodded, thinking about the letter sitting in my home office, the one offering me the position of medical director at the same hospital. I'd worked my way up from nurse to doctor, specializing in emergency medicine while maintaining my nursing shifts to pay for my education. But to Patricia, I was still just the nurse who'd married her son, never quite good enough for the prestigious Bennett family. You know, dear, Patricia leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, it's not too late to consider advancing your career. Sarah could put in a good word for you. Maybe help you become a physician's assistant. Before I could respond, Mike walked in, his timing perfect as always. He caught my eye and winked, knowing exactly what conversation he just interrupted. Mom, Emma needs to head out. She has an important meeting this afternoon. Patricia waved dismissively. Yes, more nursing duties, though I don't understand why they need so many meetings for that. If she only knew I was heading to Memorial General to finalize my contract as their new emergency department director. The drive to the hospital was quiet, Mike's hand resting supportively on mine. You know, he said, breaking the silence, Mom's going to have quite the shock next month when you start your new position. I smiled, thinking about the upcoming changes. Memorial General was merging their emergency and trauma departments, and they needed someone with both nursing and medical experience to oversee the transition. My unique background made me the perfect candidate. Sarah's starting next week in neurology, I reminded him. I'd rather wait until I'm settled in before dropping this bomb on your mother. Mike laughed. You're too kind. Mom's been impossible ever since Sarah got her residency position. The way she treats you. Sometimes I wish you'd just tell her everything. I understood his frustration. Patricia had spent years making subtle and not so subtle digs about my career choice. Remember when she gave me that children's book about becoming a doctor for Christmas? I chuckled. If only she knew I was already halfway through medical school then. Or when she tried to set me up with that lovely doctor at her country club. Mike added, shaking his head. Her face when I told her I was perfectly happy with my brilliant wife. The hospital came into view, its modern glass facade gleaming in the afternoon sun. In just a few weeks, I'd be walking through those doors not as Dr. Thompson, the ER doctor, but as Dr. Thompson, Medical Director of Emergency and Trauma Services. You know, Mike said as he pulled up to the entrance, Mom's having her knee surgery next month. Guess which department she's being transferred to for post-op care? I froze, the implications hitting me. Emergency and Trauma Services. Mike's grin widened. Sometimes karma has perfect timing, doesn't it? As I walked into the hospital for my meeting, I couldn't help but smile. Patricia Bennett was about to learn that her daughter-in-law, the one she dismissed as just a nurse, had quietly built a career that would soon have her daughter reporting to me. But first, I had a department to reorganize and a transition to manage. After all, I hadn't gotten here by focusing on proving people wrong. I'd gotten here by proving myself right. The first few weeks as medical director were intense. I completely restructured the emergency response protocols, implemented new training programs, and streamlined the department's operations. The staff responded positively to my changes, particularly appreciating my background in nursing that gave me unique insight into their challenges. Sarah started her neurology residency as planned, though our paths rarely crossed. When we did see each other at hospital functions, she was civil but distant, clearly unsure how to handle the fact that her brother's simple nurse wife was now on the hospital's executive board. Then came the day of Patricia's surgery. I was in my office reviewing patient files when my assistant knocked. Dr. Thompson, there's been a complication with a post-op patient in room 204. They're requesting an immediate consultation with the department director. Room 204, Patricia's room. I grabbed my white coat and stethoscope, already knowing this would be interesting. Walking into the room, I found Patricia propped up in bed, her face flushed with agitation as she berated a young nurse. I demand to speak to whoever's in charge. This is unacceptable. I specifically requested my daughter's supervision for my post-op care. That would be me, Mrs. Bennett, I said calmly, stepping into view. The color drained from Patricia's face. Emma? What are you? Where is the department director? You're looking at her, I replied, picking up her chart. I'm Dr. Thompson, Medical Director of Emergency and Trauma Services. Now, what seems to be the problem? Patricia's mouth opened and closed several times, no words coming out. The nurse shot me a grateful look and quickly explained the situation. Patricia had been refusing her prescribed physical therapy exercises, insisting on waiting for Sarah's approval. Mrs. Bennett, I said, deliberately using her formal name. While Dr. Sarah Bennett is an excellent neurologist, she's not specialized in post-operative care. These exercises have been specifically designed for your recovery by our orthopedic team. But you're a nurse, Patricia stammered. I was a nurse, I corrected her. And then I became a doctor, and now I'm the medical director. Your recovery plan requires these exercises to begin immediately. Would you like me to explain the medical reasoning behind each one? Patricia's face cycled through various emotions: shock, embarrassment, and finally, a grudging respect. How long? She asked quietly. How long what? How long have you been a doctor? Why didn't you tell us? I sat down in the chair beside her bed. I completed medical school 5 years ago while working as a nurse. I wanted to achieve this on my own terms without any external pressures or expectations. Patricia had the grace to look ashamed. All those times I suggested you advance your career. I already was, I finished for her. I just didn't feel the need to announce it. The nurse returned with a physical therapist, and I stood up. Now, Mrs. Bennett, I expect full cooperation with your recovery plan. As your medical director, I'll be overseeing your progress personally. As I turned to leave, Patricia called out, Emma, Dr. Thompson, I owe you an apology. I paused at the door. No, Mrs. Bennett, you don't owe me anything. Just focus on your recovery. Later that evening, I found Sarah waiting outside my office. So, she said, arms crossed, when were you planning to tell us? About what? I asked, unlocking my door and gesturing for her to come in. About all of this, she waved her hand around. About being the medical director. About being my boss, essentially. I sat down behind my desk, noting how different Sarah looked from her usually confident self. I didn't think it needed a special announcement. My appointment was posted in the hospital newsletter. Mom's mortified, Sarah said, finally cracking a smile. All these years of bragging about her doctor daughter, and it turns out her nurse daughter-in-law outranks both of us. This isn't about rank, Sarah. No, she agreed, it's about determination. And I have to admit, I'm impressed. Managing medical school while working full-time? That's incredible. For the first time since we'd become family, Sarah and I had a real conversation. She admitted feeling pressure to live up to her mother's expectations, while I shared stories about balancing work and studies. By the time she left my office, something had shifted in our relationship. The annual hospital gala arrived 3 months after Patricia's surgery. I stood at the podium, preparing to give my keynote speech about the successful merger of our emergency and trauma departments. In the audience, I could see Mike beaming with pride, Sarah sitting attentively, and Patricia, who had made a full recovery, watching with an expression I'd never seen before. When I started my journey in healthcare, I was told there were limits to what I could achieve, that being a nurse was enough, that I should know my place. I paused, making brief eye contact with Patricia. But what I learned was that every role in healthcare is vital, and understanding multiple perspectives makes us better at what we do. After the speech, Patricia approached me at the reception, moving smoothly with her newly healed knee. That was remarkable, Emma, she said, her voice carrying none of its usual condescension. Though I suspect I wasn't the only one who needed to hear it. I watched as she glanced around the room at other administrators and doctors, some of whom had likely dismissed their nursing staff just as she had dismissed me. You know, she continued, I've been doing a lot of thinking during my recovery. Every time you came to check on me, every time you explained a procedure or adjusted my treatment plan, I kept remembering all the things I'd said to you over the years. Patricia, that's in the past, I started, but she held up her hand. No, please let me finish. I was wrong. Not just about you, but about what success looks like. I was so focused on titles and prestige that I missed seeing real achievement when it was right in front of me. Mike joined us, wrapping an arm around my waist. Mom actually bragged about you at her country club last week, he said, grinning. Told everyone about her brilliant daughter-in-law, the medical director. Patricia blushed, something I'd never seen before. Well, you can't blame me for being proud now, though I probably should have been proud all along. Sarah appeared with champagne flutes for everyone. Are we finally having the conversation about how Emma made us all look like underachievers? She teased, handing out the glasses, because I've been waiting to toast to that. The four of us laughed, and for the first time, it felt genuine. No underlying tension, no hidden comparisons. To Emma, Patricia raised her glass, who taught me that success isn't about where you start, but how far you're willing to go. And to family, I added, who can surprise you in the best ways. The following week, I found a package on my desk. Inside was a framed photo of my first day as a nurse, along with my medical school graduation picture and a recent shot of me in my medical director's office. A note from Patricia Reed, a reminder that every step of the journey matters. Thank you for showing me that. I hung it prominently in my office, where it served as a conversation starter with young nurses who doubted their potential for advancement. Your path is your own, I would tell them. Don't let anyone else define your success. The hospital flourished under the new integrated system I'd implemented. Sarah and I began collaborating on cases, combining her neurological expertise with my emergency medicine background. We even co-authored a paper on improving emergency response times for stroke patients. Patricia, to everyone's surprise, started volunteering at the hospital's Family Support Center, helping relatives of long-term patients navigate the healthcare system. I learned from the best, she would say when people asked what inspired her to volunteer. One evening, as we all gathered for family dinner, now a weekly tradition rather than an obligation, I watched Patricia showing Mike's baby photos to my newly hired emergency room staff, bragging about her family with a warmth that included everyone at the table. You know what, Emma, she said later, helping me with the dishes. I always wanted my children to be extraordinary, to stand out. I just never expected to learn what extraordinary really means from you. I smiled, thinking about how far we'd all come. Sometimes the best achievements are the ones we never planned for. Like having a mother-in-law admit she was wrong. She quipped, surprising me with her self-awareness. Like finding out family can grow stronger through challenges, I corrected her gently. As we rejoined the others in the living room, I caught Mike's eye and saw my own contentment reflected there. Success wasn't just about titles or positions. It was about breaking down barriers, changing perspectives, and building bridges where walls once stood. And sometimes the greatest victory isn't in proving others wrong, but in helping them see a better way forward.